Hello, Mets fans, and welcome to another edition of the Just Mets podcast, your midweek recap, your midweek show, your midweek check in. I don't know if we've got a name for this just yet. My name is Andrew Claudio. The Mets have lost 2 out of 3 to the Arizona Diamondbacks. They've lost 2 straight games after a 4 game winning streak. And yeah, we're live on the Just Mets YouTube channel. We're presented by the Believe Podcast Network. And I don't know how many of you are going to join me live if you're listening next day. I fully understand the Knicks just had a very thrilling victory over the Boston Celtics. And I understand if you don't really want to look at this team for a little bit, because that was a frustrating 2 days. The Mets are outscored 14-3 over the final 2 days, 2 games at Citi Field. And if you paid attention at all to our Mets therapy recaps that I've been doing, I was in attendance on Tuesday. Freezing my ass off for the majority of the time there. And I sat in the sun for the first 7 innings of that game before the sun went away. I should just say, just good job, Steve Cohen, moving the time up for Tuesday and Wednesday. A little confused why it couldn't just be all 3 days, but who knows why you even chose to do it the first 2 days. I won't complain. Definitely made a difference in the ability to enjoy the game on Tuesday. It's not the best if your offense doesn't really talk about run prevention, create many runs for your fan base to see a back-to-back games in which the other team's able to get 7 and you're barely able to get a couple of runs. Look, I want to treat this like, just to stick with the therapy theme, a bit of a counseling session, because I'm not someone that will ever overreact to April baseball. I'm just not. The sample size is way too small. It's like reacting to the first week of the NBA season, week 1 of the NFL season, and projecting out what this team is, what this team is going to be for the foreseeable future. I don't believe baseball works that way. My cutoff, my checkpoint where I really check standings or check how guys are doing is Memorial Day. That's always been my rule. And part of it is because when I was much younger, I did have the stretches of these is 162 one-game seasons, and I need to react to them as such. But I do understand, and I don't want to gaslight anybody. The Mets were very frustrating the last 2 days. I think the best place to start is just to talk about this very cold offense from the past two games. Again, they score 3 runs. Not a lot of power on this team. Not a lot of clutch hitting on this team. The runners in scoring position conversation continues to happen. Let's just go one by one and discuss who is actually cold on this team, pun intended, at the plate to start the season. So this is full season sample we're talking about. I'm just going to go in order of total at-bats so far. So Bo Bichette has the most at-bats on the team at 57. He's hitting 228 with the 262 on base, 263 slug, which is good for a 525 OPS. Only has 2 extra base hits. He had those 2 doubles in San Francisco. Does not have a extra base hit at home yet this year. Does have 6 RBIs on the season. Has started to get a few hits for runners in scoring position. And look, if you've been watching every game, he started to come out of it since the beginning of the Arizona series. Excuse me, the San Francisco series. Had 2 hits yesterday. Like, I'm not obviously worried about Bo Bichette. The big one is the next one, Francisco Lindor. 51 at bats so far. Had a 2-hit game on Monday and then didn't get a hit from his 3rd at bat on for the rest of the series, I don't believe. I think he might have had a hit tonight, actually. Let me double check. Once the Mets went down by double figures, but once they went down 7-1, they officially became an iPad team. Like, do I pay attention to this game? Francisco Lindor in this 3rd game against the Diamondbacks did have a hit. So I don't want to take that away from him. He did have a hit tonight. But on the season, Francisco Lindor has just gotten off to one of his normal April and March starts to start the season. He is hitting 157 with a 306 on base because he has 10 walks on the season. A 255 slugging percentage, a 561 OPS. He does not have an RBI yet through 13 games. It is the longest drought to start a season he's had without an RBI. And then really what we're highlighting here is the next couple of guys who have a ton of at-bats but have just not contributed enough just yet. So Marcus Semien has 47 at bats, the third most on the Mets so far this year. I know he had a couple of games in San Francisco where it at least quelled the fears of, is he washed? But he is at least still struggling, if we can conclude that, to start the year. A 213 average, a 283 on base, a 319 slug, and a 602 OPS. Ironically, the OPS keep getting higher. So that's where he's at this point. Brett Beatty, look, it's a 273 average, which if he finishes with that, I'll take it. Brett Beatty doesn't have a walk yet this year. He has 12 strikeouts, which, I mean, it's up there with Bichette this team has struck out a bunch, but he is batting 273 with a 267 on base. So his average is higher than his on base percentage. I didn't know that was possible. And a 386 slug, which is good for a 653 OPS. And then Jorge Polanco, who may be headed for an IL stint, he is 8 for 40 to start the year. He's hitting 200 as a New York Met so far. No extra base hits. Does have 3 extra base hits. No home runs. 1 RBI on the season. He's left something to be desired. And look, you have the lower level guys. Carson Bench. What do I want to say about Carson Bench? My fear coming into the season is that we would be overreacting to spring training. I wanted him to come up here and stay up here. It's way too soon to say he has to get sent back down. I will just start there. I think you need to give this kid a month and a half. Juan Soto's out, and I'll get to that in a second because I think that's where I'm going with the conclusion I'm about to make. Give the kid a ton of at-bats. We've seen this a lot, unfortunately, in the Mets world. Brett Beatty gets called up a little too soon, gets sent back down, and eventually finds a home in the majors. Mark Vientos has very much been on this roller coaster. We saw it last year with Francisco Alvarez. Got sent down just to clear his head, came back. He's been outstanding to start this season. Although he did have a bad couple games the last couple, but he's got a 918 OPS. He's been one of the few guys that's hit for power so far this year. I didn't say Luis Robert Jr., who is obviously hit the home run tonight. He's been very good to start his Mets career. As far as Carson Bench is concerned, you got to give him a month and a half, give him the at-bats, and then if it gets so bad that he's just like a 9-hitter, that like his only extra base hit is going to be the one he had on opening day. If he's still struggling like this, then yeah, send him down, let him clear his head. We've seen this consistently with other homegrown Mets. They come up maybe a little too soon. Michael Conforto is the name that always came to mind for me. Looked like never skipped a beat. And those 2 months that he played at the end of 2015, struggled for most of the playoffs to the point where the conversation was there. Do we sit him for the World Series? Like by the time it got to Game 4, and he got rid of all those conversations by hitting 2 home runs in Game 4. I just named just about everybody that is getting regular at bats. Like Mark Vientos wasn't getting regular at bats, hit his way into the lineup. And now he's got 31 at-bats on the season and just had a series where he didn't get a hit. Jared Young, in his small sample size, is hitting. Tyrone Taylor is the highest, had a ball off the wall today. He hit a home run in San Francisco. Like, small sample size for him. Luis Torrens, he also is 4 for 16 to start the year. I don't want to go fully through the roster. Just about everybody I named has more at-bats than Juan Soto is really where I'm going with this. And when Juan Soto pulled up lame at third base, the alarm bells started sounding in my head. What then happened was the Mets scored 10 runs that night, even with him leaving in the first inning. They then scored 9 runs the next night. I believe 9 runs the next night. And for at least 24 to 48 hours, the alarm bells got a little bit quieter. Then he went back to New York. We got the imaging. The Mets won 4 in a row. And it was like, they'll survive this, right? They will be able to hold the fort while Juan Soto, while we're overly cautious about this. And what we've seen the last 2 days is that when you're missing a bat like Juan Soto in your lineup, the loss is going to be felt. I don't think the Mets have the same ceiling if Juan Soto were to miss 100 games this year. I don't think the Mets are going to have really a chance to accomplish anything this year if Juan Soto's not playing consistently in their lineup this season. So some of the April reaction needs to be looked through the lens of, or even just specifically what the offense is, needs to be looked at through the lens of they're missing their best hitter, and not just their best hitter, but one of the best in the sport. So I urge those of you frustrated by like poor Tyrone Taylor and Luis Torrens and Brett Beatty at bats. You haven't seen Juan Soto in over a week. I imagine the Mets would score more runs this series against the Diamondbacks, or at least these last 2 days against the Diamondbacks, if they had one of the best hitters in the sport. I at least think their chances, their probabilities would go up higher. Now, the other thing I want to talk about, and it's really how I like to frame what the Mets struggles are. Again, I was in attendance on Tuesday. It was hard to sit. Like I'm shivering sitting in that hoodie that's right behind me, the blue hoodie. I did not have a good time from the standpoint of it's cold, right? And it's cold in the Northeast. Like the Yankees had one hit today against the Athletics. Like this is going around to a standpoint. And I know the Diamondbacks play in a dome. I see you, Rich, in the comments. The Diamondbacks play in a dome and had 14 runs the last 2 days. They really only had 2 good innings. They had the second inning against Peterson, who was throwing batting practice, and then he shut them down largely. And then, look, it's the inning against Luke Weaver, and it's the inning against Luis Garcia, where they just batting practice was being thrown. However, like I'm not gonna dismiss what the Diamondbacks did and say like it's an excuse that the Mets are the only team that are cold right now, because see, like how am I trying to say this? I'm not going to excuse the Mets being in cold weather as why they're not scoring. Like we should dismiss it because the Diamondbacks are having 2 good innings or 3 good innings and getting to 14 runs. What I will say is when you look at where the Mets stand throughout the sport, I do think there is something to be said about where the league is at the moment and where the Mets stand amongst the league. So let's just start here, because this is where I wanted to go with this, and I clumsily got my way to it. So looking at the league leaders for team offense and team stats and team rankings in particular. So the Mets, Luis Robert Jr. hit a home run in the first inning tonight. It was a shot to left center field. It's the only run the Mets scored in this game. The Mets have hit 10 home runs this year. So far this season. The Yankees have hit 11. Like they're not that far behind. So let me pull up the MLB stats because they're updated and they're current. If the Mets were to hit 2 more home runs, they would be 8th, I believe, in baseball. That where they are with the stats to start the season is not that far behind where the entire sport is to start the season. There are a lot of cold starts being had by a lot of teams, by a lot of players. Here, I have the stats updated. So the Mets are currently tied for 19th with 6 teams who have hit 10 home runs so far this season. The Red Sox have hit 9. They're in 25th. Tied for 12th with 11 home runs this year as a team are the Royals, the Twins, the Yankees, the Phillies, the Mariners, the Rays, and the Rangers. 2 teams are tied for 9th with 12, so 2 more than the Mets. A couple teams have 13, so 3 more than the Mets. That's the Cubs, the Rockies, and the Cardinals. And then like the Dodgers have gotten off to the start. I think a lot of us thought they would. They have 21 home runs, but 4 more than the second place team, which is the Braves with 17. So that's like the Mets have a lot of company, it seems, where they are compared to the rest of the league in the power outage to start the year. So that's just home runs. It's just one metric. What about runs scored, Andrew? Where do the Mets rank with runs scored? Well, the Mets are 9th, tied for 9th in baseball in runs scored to start the year. They've scored 56 runs. They're tied with the Chicago Cubs, ahead of the Rays, the Rockies, the Detroit Tigers, more than the Yankees. They're right behind the Cardinals, who have 59. The Twins have 50. I don't think that's going to last. The Twins and Cardinals ahead of the Mets for runs scored this season. Point is, to start the season, they're 10th or tied for ninth in runs scored this year. So they're not even a bottom 10 offense to start this season as far as runs scored are concerned. You got a batting average. The Mets are sitting there at exactly 10th. On base percentage, the Mets are 14th. Slugging percentage, and that's the thing I was actually surprised by. I thought the Mets were going to be bottom 5 because they just haven't had a lot of power on this team just yet. They're sitting here at 14th to start the year, .003 behind the Chicago Cubs for 12th, which, look, you don't want to be a middle of the road offense for sure. It's not that far away from being a top 10 offense so far this year. But Andrew, runners in scoring position. It's a number that matters. It's a number we're going to pay attention to this season. Well, what if I told you that even coming into tonight, so I don't know whether this is according to Fangraphs that these are updated. So I don't know if these numbers are including what happened in this game tonight, or if they're including the numbers that happened in the baseball tonight, or if this is excluding Thursday night's games. What if I told you just by plate appearances? So actually, we'll go to at-bats. The Mets have the third most at-bats this season with runners in scoring position. They always create these run-scoring opportunities. This was a staple for them last year. They didn't come through enough, right? What if I told you the Mets are tied for 5th in baseball for hits with runners in scoring position? They have 31 hits with runners in scoring position. They have 31 for 123. Only 4 teams have more than them. The Dodgers and the Tigers both have 33. The Houston Astros have 37, and the Brewers have 39. The reason it stands out that the Mets futility exists, because if you just go to average, which is, again, hits, and only hits are the things that we count in average, the Mets are 15th. So they haven't cashed in on their several opportunities. If they were just like a 270 average, those runs, they'd probably be first in total hits. But unfortunately, we're talking about the team that creates a lot of scoring opportunities and hasn't cashed in enough times. However, we are talking about a team that has done it more so than about 25 other teams to start the year. I don't know if that quells anybody's annoyance from the last couple days. Is that, it's great. They're creating a ton of opportunities. They need to cash in more often. I'm just letting you know, when it warms up, the process is there. They're creating a ton of opportunities. It might lead, when the weather gets warmer, to them, having a winning streak or two, as long as the pitching stays what we've seen to start the season. And if you want to go like individually, like guys on this team and how they performed with runners in scoring position, Marcus Semien is 5 for 17. Luis Robert is 5 for 10. Mark Vientos is 5 for 12, although it's 0 for his last 4 after this series. Bo Bichette is 3 for 17, but got off to like an 0 for 12 start to this season. Juan Soto, 3 for 9. Brett Beatty, 2 for 11. That's worse than it feels. And then look, Carson Bench is 0 for 14 to start his career. Sneaky, the what's it called? Francisco Alvarez, 0 for 9. 0 for 6, to start this season. 0 for 9 in plate appearances. Then Lindor is 1 for 7 to start the season. Yeah. I don't know if that came across to anybody as anything more than just gibberish, but I gotta say, looking at these numbers after what the last 2 days were, what games 2 through 5 were, and really just what the mood has been and the chatter about this offense, you'd have thought they have a bottom 5 offense in the sport, even a bottom 10. It's like a 11th to 13th best offense in the majors. It's mid. I guess that's what the kids say, which probably is why they're 7-6 to start the year. And that's missing Juan Soto for all of the last 6 or 7 games. So I'm really trying to preach some patience here. I'm having a hard time really getting too upset about a 7-13 start. These last 2 games were very annoying to watch. Seeing David Peterson give them no chance by going down early and a very cold offense not being able to pick him up. Yeah, it's frustrating. Today, the bullpen not being able to hold with McLean looking like his very dominant self for 6 innings. Very frustrating. I acknowledge it. I acknowledge those feelings. I would say it is still very early for all of this to start making any judgments. And look, who knows? It's going to be in the 60s here in the Big Apple for the next couple days. Maybe that'll warm up the bats as well. If there is anybody in the chat, I already see a couple of comments I want to get to. James Buckley, we'll start here. He's got a comment about Francisco Lindor. Special thanks to Captain Hammett. 0 RBIs, 157 average after 13 games. He's been bad. He was my El Stinko for this past week on the Monday show. The key 2 words, I guess, maybe number and word in your comment, James, are 13 games. This is a very small sample. In fact, let me just pull my calculator up. What is 13 out of 162 from a percentage standpoint? So if you're looking at how small a sample, 162 divided by 13. Wait, 162 divided by 13. So 12% of the season? No, it's 0.1% of the season. I don't know. I'm bad at my calculator didn't work. Am I supposed to do? That's what it is. It's 13 divided by 162. Okay, it's 8% of the season. 8% of a basketball season. 8% times 82 is 7 games. So ironically, a lot of Knicks fans do overreact to 7 games of a basketball season. So you're right on par, James. We've consistently seen Lindor get off to starts like this. In fact, while I'm here, I might as well pull up his career stats to see, has Lindor ever gotten off to a good like April? You know, at least I could look at his career in April and see if he's ever looked, if he's ever had what his numbers are for his career. It's a good topic for the newsletter. Has Lindor ever had a good April before? Looking at his months, this is per Baseball Reference. Francisco Lindor in April and March has a career 248 average, a career 759 OPS. He's always had a great May, an 810 career OPS in May. Ironically, man, this is a second half player and a half. Ironically, Francisco Lindor in his career in June, that's actually been statistically his worst month. A 307 on base every June. And look, I think the year that finally won him over with the fan base was 2024. June is when he took off, so it's why he's got endless amount of patience for me, James. I know he's been dreadful to start the season. As you mentioned, calling him Captain Hammett, he had surgery, did not get a full spring training. He's got to be better. That's for sure. Never know if it warms up. If he starts to warm up too, I would preach patience with Francisco Lindor, because I will always preach patience with Francisco Lindor. And then James with another one. McLean leaves with a 1.62 ERA, goes up to 2.70 thanks to Weaver. Yeah, it's why ERA is not always the best indicator of how a pitcher is doing. Inherited runners being let in. Listen, think of Peralta, left with a shutout in the 5th inning on Tuesday, and ends up with 3 runs allowed because, look, he allowed those base runners, but because Brazoban allowed 3 runners to score. McLean was awesome tonight. He was just playing awesome tonight. That's my biggest takeaway, is that I have multiple pitchers in this rotation that I trust going forward to throw up zeros. So that way, when the offense does show up and start to warm up, we can see a long winning streak. Look, please go look at what the Mets numbers were as a team last August offensively. That was one of the best offensive months that they've ever had, and they were 6 games under 500 because it's one of the worst pitching months that they ever had. And that's where teams usually build their comfortable leads, get comfortably over 500. It's like, oh, the offense is now matching the pitching. We never got that last year. The pitching was good for 3 months or 2.5 months, fell off a cliff, and we get the season that we got last year. I am confident in both McLean having an ERA closer to the bottom number than the number that he ends up having right now. Let's see. Any other comments? Oh, Tetuone. Tet-U111. Okay. I don't know how to pronounce your screen name, but thank you for the comment. McLean should have had a complete game shutout. It was his game to lose, not the bullpen's. He left with 100 pitches thrown. And I see you arguing with Rich now. Why baby him? It is April. Why are we pushing pitchers past 100 pitches in April in the freezing cold? Like, he looked kind of cooked. I gotta be honest. Like, I saw some of this on Twitter tonight. Why did McLean get taken out after he allowed the first two guys to reach base? Like, one of the prominent voices being like, that's analytics mind. Analytics mind would have been taking him out after 6 in 85 pitches, like letting Luke Weaver start with a clean 7th inning. I thought, like, good job by Mendy letting him go out there. Let's see what you got, kid. Can you like push through? And he didn't. Like, he gave up a walk and gave up a hit. I'd argue if it was his game to lose, he lost. I thought Luke Weaver could have performed better tonight. He's been awesome to start the year, but I'm not blaming McLean for the loss. I'm also just not blaming Mendy for taking him out after he allowed the first 2 base runners. You know, it would have been worse if they did say it's your game to lose, McLean, and he allowed all 3 runs or a 5-run 7th inning. You'd be like, man, he was pitching so well. Why didn't you pull the plug sooner? He clearly lost it in the 7th. So, yeah, I strongly disagree, but thank you for the comment. And then Rich just said it. It's the equivalent of like 5 quarters into the NFL season. Unfortunately for you, Rich, you're a Jets fan, so you probably can tell how the season is going to go 5 quarters into a season. I would tell you to react accordingly, but I know your reactions because I've lived that life rather consistently. So yeah. I see Kevin Danishevsky's in the chat, which means it's time to wrap up. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another edition of the by the way, great game for Josh Hart tonight, Kevin. I'm sure you enjoyed that. Thank you for joining me for another edition of the Just Mets podcast. The midweek recap. Again, preach patience with this team. Hopefully they take this weekend series against the Sacramento Athletics. Jeff McNeil tribute video incoming. Deserves it. I hope that's not an unpopular opinion. He deserves a tribute video. Guy made 2 All-Star teams as a Met. There's not a lot of 2-time All-Stars in Mets history, you know? So yeah, shout out to Jeff McNeil. I don't miss him, don't get me wrong, but I hope he gets an ovation when he comes back to Citi Field over the weekend. If you dug this, please like this video. Remember to subscribe. If you're listening on the podcast feed, leave a 5-star rating and a review, Apple or on Spotify. We will be back. Rich and I will be back, I believe, Sunday night after the Mets play the A's at the end of that series. So stay tuned for a showtime for that. But until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Let's go, Mets. And in the words of the immortal Gary Cohen, we are out of here.